everyone. I'm Nancy Seligson, Supervisor of the Town of Mamaroneck, and I'm here with Tom Murphy, who's running for mayor in the village of Mamaroneck and is also a councilman in the town of Mamaroneck, and first-time candidate Nora Lucas, who's running for trustee in the village of Mamaroneck. I'm happy to help all of you get to know them a little better right now. So I'm going to start with Nora. Nora, tell us a little bit about your background and involvement in the community.
Well, thanks, Nancy. I've lived in the village since 1986. I grew up in the town, and I've been a volunteer. I was a volunteer in the village from the first moment we moved in, when I was put on the Landmarks Commission, because I'm an architectural historian. So I've been interested in, I work in lots of other governments for my job. And so I've spent a lot of time at village board meetings and learning about zoning and planning and other aspects. And I just feel that it's time to try to do it from the dais as opposed to behind the dais. I was a PTSA volunteer for many, many years. My daughter's now in college. I've been a Girl Scout volunteer, so I feel like I need to find some outlet for the time that I contribute to organizations other than my work ones.
So you've been involved with the community for a long time.
For a long time, and I grew up here, so yes.
Great. Okay, and Tom, we know that you have been involved with the community for a very long time, including being a current councilman on the town board, and you were a trustee in the village of Mamaroneck as well in the past. So what made you decide to run for mayor this time?
Well, you know, Nancy, like you said, I got involved, I think, around when you got involved, the turn of the century, in 2000. You know, I've been asked to run for mayor in the village of Mamaroneck many times. I was a trustee in Mamaroneck for 5 years, and I really enjoyed my time in Mamaroneck. I think I got relationships and a knowledge of the community that I always appreciated. And you know, I think that this time, you know, my kids are older. My job is less demanding than it had been. So I have more time to do it. And, you know, I am, as you pointed out, currently a town councilman. So, I mean, it's more work being the chief elected official, but I'm also, you know, doing a lot of, as you know, government work as it is right now. So it'll just be, you know, a shift in my my time. And, you know, I really appreciated and enjoyed working in the town of Mamaroneck and being an elected official in the town of Mamaroneck. And I think that there are lessons and skills that I've developed there which will help the village of Mamaroneck if I become mayor.
Well, we certainly work closely with our sister municipalities, so I think it's an interesting point of view that you've had to be on both different boards and see how they interact. I would be very sorry to lose you as a councilman in the town of Mamaroneck, but I think it would be a great benefit to the village to get you as their mayor.
You know, and we could do a lot of shared services, and, you know, we could talk about, you know, how we could save the taxpayers money by, you know, working together instead of, you know, having everybody have their own little fiefdom.
You know, I think that we have a lot of great shared services among our three municipalities, including the village of Larchmont, but there always seems to be more opportunity for that. And having a close working relationship, as you and I do, certainly seems like it would give us the opportunity.
Yes.
Okay, well, there are big issues in the village of Mamaroneck, as there are all over these days. But one of the issues that seems to come up a lot in the village of Mamaroneck is land use, and some of specific situations and the whole philosophy and concept of land use. And I wondered if you wanted to talk a little bit about that.
Can we start?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that we have, you know, we have a pretty much fully developed community. It's an old community. So when we talk about development, it's often redevelopment. And I think we have to strike a balance between replacing existing structures that have maybe outlived their usefulness with something new, and still making sure that what we build and what we encourage to be built is in keeping with the community. Some people are concerned because there's so many apartment buildings that are going up along the post road right now, and it's sort of surprising to see it, and people don't think about that as a possibility, but that is the way our zoning is. So I think we have to really, you know, work with our environmental laws and our coastal program, and just make sure that the development that we encourage, which we need to do to increase our tax base, also maintains the character of the community that we all move to.
Yeah, I think Nora's really covered it very well. I think what we have to do is write zoning laws and enforce zoning laws that first of all, protect the residents. I mean, the whole purpose of zoning, at
Right.
the end of the day, is to protect the residents. It isn't to enrich outside developers. And what we can't do is every time a developer has an idea, start changing our zoning codes based upon his idea. While it might be nice to have different kind of businesses and different kinds of big buildings, and they're always talking about how it will eventually increase your tax base and your taxes will lower. But I've never seen taxes ever get lowered based upon anybody building a building, because there's always more services that have to be added, more children that go to the school system. So I think we have to relook at the master plan, and then really strengthen it, and then live by it, and not change zoning based upon what is the flavor of the month, or what the real estate investment trust wants to make money really quick. We have a lot of potential development. One of the potential developments is in Hampshire, and that's a development that would really change the character of that community. And we're not in a position to make a decision on that right now, but we have to make sure that when somebody buys a home in our community, that area is not going to change around them, and impact their property values, impact their quality of life, because that's what we all moved up here from. For those of us who moved up here, Nora's a lifelong resident, but for those of us who moved up for the city, we moved up not to live in another city, but to live in a small, peaceful village.
And the development and changes in development affect the environment as well. So it's not
Correct.
just the character, but actually the physical environment, the natural environment, and what's the amount of runoff from an area,
Absolutely.
and the number of trees, and the way it actually acts.
Number of cars that come in and out of the area.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think all of those things are so important in taking into account, and must be taken into account when looking at development. But Tom, you mentioned the master plan, which leads to an issue of how to engage people in the community. Volunteers and citizen involvement and engagement is so important to any community, and it's sometimes a struggle to get people to participate. Sometimes you get people, participating too much in this particular issue. But would you envision having a big outreach to the community for if you were to look back or look over the master plan?
I think you would have to. I think you can't really do a good master plan without getting a lot of impact from the community. The 5 people on the board is not enough of a focus group, as it were. You need to go into the neighborhoods and see what the individual concerns are of those neighborhoods. And I think that's part of the utility of having an election that's contested. You get to go into the neighborhoods and knock on doors and hear people's concerns. I think that once you have a master plan, you really have to try and live by it. But in terms of getting people involved, I think it's important as an elected official and as a mayor who's running the meeting to realize that the person who gets up at the microphone to voice his concerns, that might be the first and only time in that person's life that they're going to address their government. And they should be treated with respect, and they should be treated with kindness, and they should be listened to. And I've had the experience both on the town council and on the village council of having somebody come to the mic and say something that actually changed my mind.
Of course.
Yeah,
That's what we hope.
Right, that's what you hope. But that has been lacking lately. It seems a lot of times people come to decisions before they
Yes.
come to the public hearing, and they lose sight of the fact that the public hearing is where the decision should be made.
Yeah, the public hearing is not just the vote. The public hearing needs to be the evaluation of all sides of the issue. I think sometimes in the village, the public hearing is simply a vote.
And do you have any ideas of how you would tap into the potential of getting people out to voice their opinions and participate in a public hearing type setting?
Well, I think for the comprehensive plan, I mean, we're 5 years into our last plan, and we didn't do any updates before we did the one 5 years ago. And I think we're starting to do that. And when we did the plan 5 years ago, there were charrettes and in all the different neighborhoods. I think that's probably a smart thing to do. There are probably many of the people who participated 6 years ago now, 7 years ago, who would be willing to come back and say whether their ideas worked, didn't work. I mean, that's the part. It's not the comprehensive plan isn't written in stone. We can make changes to it if it's not going well, but we do need to use it as our comprehensive plan. And I think that we should revisit the same kinds of charrettes that we did 7 years ago with this new update.
Yes, I agree with you. But I think, what also people, it's important that people feel comfortable coming to their village board meetings. And they don't want to come to a village board meeting if they think it's just going to be drama and fights and arguments. So I think, as the town board and yourself have been a good example of working in a collegial atmosphere. And you can disagree, and you can, have strong disagreements, but there's no reason to be, nasty to people. And I think that people see that on their TV and they say, I'm not going to go there because I don't want to be involved in that.
Yeah, there's often, the joke that the best reality TV is the Village of Mamaroneck board meetings, when I think that from a government standpoint, that's not what you want. You want to be able to have a calm meeting where everyone does feel comfortable participating.
Good government's boring.
That's okay.
Yeah,
It's
but,
true.
yeah.
I always feel sorry for people who watch our meetings because it is kind of boring. But it's a great way to see how your government works.
Yes, it is.
Okay, well, another big issue that we have to deal with in local government is the New York State tax levy cap. And that has been imposed by the governor and the state legislature on all our local municipalities to hold our tax levy to, well, they say 2%, but it actually turns out to be lower than that with the formula. And it really has been tough to live within that, and it's a difficult thing to explain to the public as well, because we have so many responsibilities to provide services and to maintain infrastructure. But how do you think you would address that on the village board?
Well,
I think that I mean, it's also a problem for school districts, because it was probably easier to streamline in the beginning of the cut, in the beginning of the cap. But as you get further into it, people are going to be noticing there's less fat to cut. And I think part of it is educating people about what services cost and what services can be reduced or shared. I think that probably the best way at this stage, when there isn't a lot of fat to cut, is to try and figure out how to do things less expensively with maintaining the same level of service. Because even if we stick with the tax, even when we meet the tax cap, it's not as if our taxes go down.
Right.
And I think the other thing is to really be careful about how we spend our taxpayer dollars. Spend it efficiently. Think very carefully about how contracts are administered. We've had a couple of contracts in the village that have not gone well. The Jefferson Avenue Bridge is one that we need to make sure that does not happen again in the village.
I know there was a great fear that the Tappan Zee would be finished before the Jefferson Avenue Bridge.
It was a new thing. Yeah.
But I'm very glad it wasn't.
Yes.
Well, one of the things that I did when I was on the village board the last time was hire a full-time village attorney. And I think that was very cost conscious, and it paid off at the time. And for some reason, it got negated a few years after. But legal fees are a vast waste of taxpayer money. It's you don't get anything out of it, and that's why part of the utility of having an in-house counsel was that person kept you out of litigation. And when you did get into litigation, gave you advice on how to be cost effective. When you have an attorney who's billing you by the hour, he might not give you the advice about how to be cost effective as readily as someone who's just on a salary. Yeah. So that's one of the ways I would look at trying to save the taxpayers' money. But the other thing is we have to be honest with the taxpayers and say we deliver in the town, in the village, a large amount of service, and that's what keeps your property values high. You don't have to lug your garbage to the dump yourself. You don't have to have a septic field yourself. This is all part of your municipal fees. So I'd like to have a conversation with the public, in the form of a public hearing that it wouldn't be an official public hearing, but just a kind of a brainstorming session about what can you live without. And if there are things that people consider superfluous and they'd rather get the money back in lower taxes, then maybe that's something we can do. But every time I've been on a village or a town board where you did talk about reducing services, people get very upset. And their argument is, well, I pay high taxes, why can't I get services? And, you know, but the corollary is you're paying high taxes because you get a lot of services.
Right.
So, you know, we have to be honest with ourselves and honest with the public that, you know, there's a large quality of life here and we want to maintain it, or we want it to, you know, slice away a bit at a time.
I think we've all seen that in trying to look at different ways that we can possibly reduce services that aren't crucial or critical or that people could live without, to try for the trade-off of reducing
the taxes.
Taxes, or changing things to fee-based so that people aren't taxed for it, but they actually pay by usage. And you know, one of the things that really lends itself to that, of course, is sanitation. And all that entails with organic waste and
It's like
solid waste.
The sewage use tax.
And the
sewage
sewer
use
fee,
Yeah.
right, the sewer use fee. And those are things that I think we're going to all have to explore more going forward. But I've seen the villages follow the town when we have gone forward with some of those fees, and they seem to make sense for everyone. I don't know if there's any other areas that you guys have contemplated as a possible change to fees, or some kind of shared service or reduced service that might result in some savings.
I don't think we've gotten that far.
No.
You know, I think it's important to get the feedback of the public first before we, you know, delve into what can be cut.
We've just started walking.
We just started walking.
Just started walking.
And how's the feedback been?
I think it's been positive. I think people are ready for a change. I think people want a government on all levels. They want a government they can believe in again. A government that can, you know, we need to show people government can work again. Because I think people lost faith in that on every level of government.
Yeah, I think people are kind of governmentally stressed right now. And I've gotten a very enthusiastic response from people who are excited that we're running.
That's great. Well,
Yeah, it's
I
nice.
think you both should instill in people a sense of trust, and that you're going to do a good job, because I think you've both proven yourselves in your lives and your community involvement that you are trustworthy and honest folks that are working hard for the community.
Well, thank
And
you.
that's wonderful to see. So it's great that you've put yourselves out there.
Yeah, I like to think that even people who disagree with me on issues know that, you know, when I say something, it's because I believe it. It's not because I'm trying to manipulate a situation. Because for me, if I can't say what I believe, there's no fun in doing this.
Yeah, and I am happy to say I've had the experience in working with you, Tom, that you are a thoughtful person, and you definitely put your intellect to work in looking at problems and issues, but you also are open to hearing everyone's side of the argument. And we're lucky in the town of Mamaroneck that we are able to communicate with one another in a respectful way, even if we disagree.
Right.
And sometimes we never end up agreeing, but
Yeah.
we do resolve things. We get there.
And you
Move
won't
the
know,
ball forward.
And you
Yeah.
won't know if you didn't disagree until you have a rational conversation about it.
Right, exactly.
Right.
You need to.
And
You need
things
to try.
Things in government do take time. You know, it's not. They're not snap decisions that you can make easily in government. It really takes some deliberation.
Well, you know what we say at work, you measure twice and you cut once. And, you know, good government takes time. You know, you can see that in Washington. Every time they hurry something up, we get a bad outcome. So, you know, I know it frustrates people, because people want, you know, they seem to want elected officials who will tell them they have all the answers and it'll be fixed the day
Right.
after I'm elected, and immediately we're going to do this. But then you see they get elected and that doesn't happen.
No.
So I'd rather just be honest and say
Right.
it takes time.
It's different campaigning between governing and campaigning.
It's a big difference.
So, would you include Harbor Island in the whole master plan as well when you look at that?
Yeah, I mean, there was a Harbor Island
master plan.
that
I
has
was on a
not,
committee.
that hasn't been followed. So there's a separate master plan for Harbor Island, and I think that absolutely needs to be revisited, because I feel that we've gotten away from that plan, and it's probably more of a wish list than a comprehensive plan. It's a different kind of policy, land use policy, but I think that there was a lot of thought given to it, and I think that the village should revisit that as a community to see whether we want to change our views, or change the comprehensive plan or master plan for Harbor Island, or whether we want to really adhere to it, because it is, you know, one of the most beautiful parks in Westchester County, if not New York State. Special.
And you know what?
is.
For in the last few years, I've lived in an apartment, and for those of us who live in apartments, Harbor Island's our backyard.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, there's many times I go down there in the summer with my chair and my book, and just sit down there and kill an hour, because it's a lovely place to recreate and just take some time off and to think and look at the water, and it gives everybody access to the waterfront,
Right.
which is the best part about living not the best, but one of the best parts about living in this community is that just sometimes at night, just sitting down by the water, hearing the rigging and the boats has a very calming effect upon me.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, we are lucky to have it. I mean, we often refer to it as the jewel of the community,
Yes.
and it really is.
It really is.
But it also seems to have so much potential and so many uses and possible conflicts and uses. I think it would be great to really revisit that master plan and move forward.
It's a heavily used park.
Yes.
And I give the Parks Department a lot of credit.
Sure.
They keep it in good shape, and it's not an easy job, because from this point till baseball season starts, those fields are in constant use,
Right.
and they're booked all the time. And it's a lot of wear and tear, a lot of little feet running up and down. And they keep it all playable and they keep it all presentable. And if you notice, they've done a lot of nice plantings over the last few years. So I give the Parks Department a lot of credit. It's not an easy job.
And it's an active use park and a passive use park, and
Yes.
it's all ages.
It is. It's wonderful.
It's a space for boats. It's a space for swimming. I mean, it's really a complicated park.
And it seems to be kind of the anchor or the gateway to Mamaroneck
Yes.
Avenue.
Yes.
Yes.
And so Mamaroneck Avenue has had a great revitalization in terms of use and vibrancy over the past few years. And there's been a lot of fun events that have been created around Mamaroneck Avenue. I don't know if you have thought at all about those kinds of events or any changes or anything you'd like to see there.
Well, I think we'd want to work with the Chamber of Commerce to see what they would like to do. I think what they've been doing lately on the weekend, not the weekend, like the Thursday night during
Yes.
the summer is a lovely idea. It gives the community a chance to meet up. The resurgence of Mamaroneck Avenue has really been a bipartisan success. It started originally under Mayor Lanza, and he got the Community Development Block Grant to take down the wires
Yes.
and bury the wires, and then Mayor Chapin brought it to fruition, and then Mayor Trifoletti brought back the street fairs, which brought a lot of people down. So there's been a lot of, and I was on the board then with Phil when he did that, and that was Phil worked very hard on that. So it's really been a community success story, And it's funny. I was in Cafe Mozart the other night. And I said to the person I was with, I said, this was the first real good restaurant
You're right,
on
yes.
Mamaroneck Avenue. So Dawn really, it brought that resurgence back. So it's been a fun thing to watch, having lived here in the early '90s and to see it now.
It is.
I missed the movie theater. That was one of the,
Yeah, I missed the movie theater.
that was one of the highlights, because when I was growing up, it was just a place kids could go. And that it closed when my daughter was in high school, and that was sort of a loss for that whole age group, because they were again dependent upon their parents to go to a movie.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I have to say I miss it too, because I'm a big movie fan, and it's too bad. But it does look like the Larchmont movie theater
Yes,
is going
that's
to be
nice.
Yeah, that's great.
kept,
Nice.
which is wonderful. Okay. Well, is there any other things you'd like the public to know about you running for office, Nora?
Well, I'm really excited to be running for office. I very much hope I get elected. I thought that I was going to be a little more nervous about being a candidate than I am, but I've worked on the other side of campaigns a lot. I'm finding it fun. I'm finding all sorts of people who are enthusiastic, and I think that I'm going to be a great trustee, and I'm going to do my best to get elected.
Great. How about you, Tom?
I'm really looking forward to I like campaigns. I like running. I like contested elections. I think it's good for democracy. I think it's good for the people of the village of Mamaroneck to have opposing viewpoints and to, have those viewpoints compete in a civilized fashion, and have the winner then go on to have his vision kind of brought to fruition. I'm very happy to be running. I think that this village has the potential to be the best run village in Westchester County. I know the employees, I know the police, I know the fire department. These are all hardworking individuals. You know, the people who work in Village Hall, they all want to do a good job. We have to tap into their potential and give them the tools they need and the encouragement they need. Because they live here, most of them, and they want this to be a great place. And I think a lot of them are very frustrated that it isn't as good as it could be. Not that it's bad, but it's just not as good as it could be. And there's no reason it can't be the best run village in Westchester. And it's not going to happen overnight, but it's going to happen if we all pull our oars in the same direction.
Sounds like you're talking about leadership.
Yes, we're talking about leadership. Yes, and leadership that brings everybody along. Not leadership just to for the benefit of the leader. That's not leadership. That's narcissism, and we don't want that. What we want is somebody who's going to say, let's make this good for everybody. Because somebody asked me one time, "Are you going to move back to the city when your kids?" I said, "No, this is where I am. This is where I'm to stay." I mean, I'm glad I grew up in the city, but that's not my city anymore. This is my home now, and I want this to be the best home for. I'd like to see my children stay here. I'd like to see Nora's daughter stay here.
Yes, I think that is a wonderful vision for all of our communities, and I'm so happy that we're all interconnected in the three municipalities and communities. And I really hope that I get a chance to work with you as the leaders of the Village of Mamaroneck. I have one really important but silly question to end up with. Mets or Yankees?
I grew up a Mets fan. My sons are Yankees fan, so I watch the Yankees now. And there's not much to watch when you're watching the Mets these days.
True.
But when I was a kid, we were a big Mets house.
And when I was a kid, we were a big Yankees house, but we won't get that between us.
So we have a little competition right there. Yeah. I only ask because somehow it always comes up in the town of Mamaroneck.
Forever
so
and always.
I really want to thank both of you for putting yourselves out there as candidates for running. I wish you the best of luck, and it has been a pleasure to work with you, Tom.
Thank you, Nancy. Same with you.
Thank you
very
Nancy.
much.
Thank you.
This is Nancy Seligson, Mamaroneck Town Supervisor with Meet the Candidates on LMC-TV with candidate Tom Murphy for the Mayor of the Village of Mamaroneck and Nora Lucas for Trustee in the Village of Mamaroneck.